Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You were right. Vitae is very much committed with EM and chronic fatigue syndrome, and we are a small company based in Barcelona, making a lot of research with a hospital which most of you may know, Hospital del Valle d'Hebron, who's having a very well-reputed unit of ME and chronic fatigue syndrome. Thanks to them, we are able to make all this research. We made a compound of NADH, CoQ10, serine, and vitamin C. And with this product, we made a clinical trial with nearly 100 patients and a biological trial. Dr. Castro, who is along with me tonight, he was responsible of making this biological trial, which is being published by Antioxidant Redox Journal. And we were really satisfied when we saw the results, which show that we, with our product, we were able to increase the mitochondrial mass and ATP. Dr. Alegre, who is the leading doctor of this unit, Thursday last in a meeting, he told me, Raimon, it's really surprising how with this product we were able to penetrate the mitochondria and increase energy, ATP, and the mitochondria mass. So we are really proud of having made this development. And our export manager, Mr. Josué Urizar, who is also joining me in this dinner, he found out that there was this event here in London, and we decided right away to come and join all of you. And we also would like at some point to share a little bit of the clinical information and all the technical information we have in order to see if it could well be of help to you and to your patients, or maybe for your research. So, as I promised, I only say some few words, and now I tell you, enjoy the nice dinner, and we see us tomorrow.
The event really started back in September 2012 because I had three, what the doctors like to call episodes, which covers a multitude of sins. Basically, my heart rate stopped. I flatlined for about 3.5 seconds, 4.2 seconds on each occasion, we reckon. So I'm lucky to be here in many respects, and the surgeon decided it'd be a very good idea if this didn't happen too often, and fitted a pacemaker. So while I was on my recovery bed, I took 2 days off work to recover from having a pacemaker fitted. I saw a program on television, and it was about the Arctic, and part of it was dedicated to the Arctic Marathon. And it just called to me. So I thought, this is the most extreme way that anyone can show that there is life after a pacemaker. And that kind of extreme nature sort of, I like challenges, and this was about as big a challenge as I was going to find right then. And I thought, right, okay, let's do that. And about 10 minutes later, the program was still on, my daughter walked in. And I thought, you don't do something as stupid as this without having a charity to do it for. And I thought, there's my answer. I will do it for an ME charity. So we then spent quite a long time researching which charity, and Invest in ME came up trumps. They are the people that pull all the other charities together and do work which is going to mean that there's not so much duplication of research. So that's how it was born. The race itself, I could have tried to go for it in April 2013, but because of various city things that I can get involved with, I decided to delay it a bit, and I'm pleased I did from the training point of view, and do it in April 2014, because the number of people I've been in front of in the last year has meant that the amount of money that I've raised for charity and corporate sponsorship is probably twice what it would have been had I have done it in 2013. The corporate sponsorship covered about 75% of the cost of the event, and the remaining 25% myself and my family paid for privately. Because what we didn't want was to have one of these events where you say, well, who's paying for what? Because I have been on several charitable events in the past. I did a cycle alongside the Great Wall of China for Mind. But nobody really knew how much of the money they were giving me was going to the cost of getting to China and all the hiring and all that sort of thing, compared with what was going to the charity. So I thought, right, let's keep these totally separate. So I've been sending checks from corporate sponsors and myself over to Richard and Pia, and they've been able to bank those and pay for the bits they needed paying for. But all the money that went via Just Giving and checks that came in after the corporate bit, we could genuinely say was profit. So, assuming one last donation comes in, which I'm quite certain it will do because he's a friend and I'll kick him if it doesn't, we are going to raise just shy of £9,000. So I'm quite pleased with that. Thank you. The training that was involved with this is obviously quite unusual because we knew that we were facing quite extreme temperatures. It was likely to be somewhere in the region of minus 25, minus 28. And running in snow, I don't know whether you've tried it, but it's a bit difficult. It's hard work. And the course we knew was not going to be prepared. It wasn't going to be graded, nor was it going to be compressed and flattened down for us. It was raw. So I knew that I had to be not only fit enough to run a marathon, but also very, very strong. So the amount of training was really quite extreme and very, very exhausting. And I looked forward to the 2 weeks that I had of not doing any training prior to going, just so I could rest. And that was brilliant. So the trip itself, we flew from Heathrow out to Oslo to, I've forgotten the name of the place now, Tromsø, and then Tromsø out to Longyearbyen. And that was the staging point where everybody that was going to do this race had to get to privately before the race organiser then took over. So what you see on screen there, is all the kit that I had to get into one bag. That is a full-size bed, so as you can see, there's quite a lot of kit I had to take there because the big thing that we were told in the race parameters was do not sweat. Now, I generate vast amounts of heat when I do exercise of any description. So do not sweat was just not going to happen. So my alternative was to have lots of changes of kit because you cannot sweat because if it does, it will freeze, you will get hypothermia, and all sorts of problems will then occur. The freezing was also a problem because whilst the surgeon was happy to give me a clean bill of health to go and do the run, he said, do not freeze your pacemaker. It won't like it. Now, I did come to the conclusion that on the lighter side, well, if my pacemaker's frozen, that means that my core skin is frozen. And if that gets cold, I've got a bigger problem than worrying about my pacemaker. Fingers and toes, yep, fine. But not the core. That really is quite a big key. So all this kit had to be taken with me. This is the airport at Longyearbyen. Landing on ice is quite exciting. I suspect that some of you have already done this. With a crosswind, it tends to get a little bit slippery. So not being a great flyer, I was a bit apprehensive about this. But it was all good and good fun. And then we were greeted with a polar bear. This is the carousel. There was no point in me standing at this carousel because what I discovered is that my bag was nowhere near where I was. Now, bearing in mind we've only got 2 days, in theory, of being at the hotel before we then go to the North Pole, losing your bag is not something you want to do. So, bag didn't turn up, thought, fine, okay, let's see what we can do here. That's got to be the most beautiful scene of an arrival lounge and departure lounge that you can possibly have. So I just thought I'd throw that one in there. And that we were 3,043 kilometres from London. So, yeah, long way from home. This is the sort of terrain that I had to train on for the last couple of days. So it was all about getting the muscles used to working in the cold, getting the lungs used to breathing in cold air. It was only about -5, -7 at Longyearbyen, which is relatively fine for me. That's a good working temperature for me. But it was good practice. And that's just a sort of wider angle shot of the high street. I just thought it was such an unusual looking high street that it was worth it. The other thing that's worth noting, because I don't know anywhere else in the world where you can do this, that's the post office. That is the only place in Longyearbyen you cannot walk in with your weapons. The bank, you can walk in there with your balaclava on, your pistol, your rifle on your back, or even holding it. And they'll still say, yes, sir, how can I serve you? How they know if they're being held up for robbery, I haven't a clue. But just thought it was a bit of fun. And that is the glacier that's coming down between the mountains. So it's really lovely to see that. And that's me in my first layer. Now, the interesting thing I found when I bought all this kit, and the kit alone, the running kit alone, cost £1,300. The base layer was so warm that I couldn't wear any other layers on top of it without overheating. And that's at -7. So this kit is very, very good. When I looked at the other kit that I had to wear, I was thinking, how on earth is this going to keep me warm? It is just too thin. But it did the most amazing job. Now, this is the Russian aeroplane that Richard mentioned. And he's quite right. The reason that we were initially delayed was because they broke it. They landed it a bit heavily, and the nose wheel buckled. And that was out at the North Pole. So they've got a plane stuck out there that they can't move. So they've got to fix it in very, very cold temperatures. Now, just returning to my luggage for a minute, because of this delay and then bad weather delays, we actually went out to the pole 3.5 days later than we ought to have done. My bag turned up in that last half a day. So I spent those 3 days being really quite stressed out, not sleeping well, and really the race preparation was not good as a consequence. So I turned up at the start line exhausted. That's the inside of the Russian aircraft. There are seatbelts, but nobody uses them. You can take on whatever you like. Yeah, there's none of this 30 centilitres or whatever it is of liquids. People were walking on with rifles, pistols. It was fine. And in fact, there wasn't room for all of us on the plane. So they just said, right, okay, we'll sit on the floor then. And they handed out extra cushions. So from that point of view, health and safety, there was not a, here are your exit doors. It was just, let's go. And the area behind the black curtain you can see is for the cargo. The cargo netting was not looking terribly good. So if we did crash, it was going to crash straight through to the front of the plane and take us with it. So it was not exactly thrilling that they'd already broken one by the time we were on this one. The other interesting bit, and I don't know whether you've ever experienced a lack of oxygen, but because this is a cargo plane, the only people that have oxygen in order to cope with the altitude are the pilots. And I was told to watch out for the reaction of people. As you can see, I was in one of the front seats, which faces back. And as we went up, after about 20 minutes of climbing, everyone fell asleep. It was the quietest plane I've heard, because no one was talking. They were all asleep. It was just because there was no oxygen. And as we came back down again, everyone woke up again. But I had oxygen, thankfully, because I was next door to the pilots, and as you can see, there is no door to get into the pilots. Once again, security, none. So the oxygen was coming out of there, so I stayed awake, which was quite amusing. That is us landing at the North Pole. Now, I say at. We were 0.64 degrees shy of the North Pole. It's about as close as you can get. And the Russian science station is there for 3 weeks of the year, that's all. And that is the runway. I don't think anyone has seen a runway quite like that. And when the plane took off and left us there, the plumes of snow that it left behind it were absolutely stunning. That's the arrivals lounge. So the arrivals gate, there isn't a lounge. And we all went through, and that's where we slept. We had 2 nights in these cabins. Now, you can just about see behind the waist of that chap that's looking so happy, a round hole. That's the hot air blower. So we had heat. The heat above the bunks, above the camp beds, was reasonable temperature. For some reason, the heat below the level of the mattress was minus something or other. Because later on, when I took off my sweaty kit, it actually froze when I put it underneath my camp bed. So you didn't put your feet down unless you had to. That's the toilet. There were 2 of these, but you only used them if you really, really were desperate. If you can imagine a music festival, Glastonbury, on the last day, do you really want to go and use one of those toilets? This was what this one was like, and they still had 2 weeks to go. So I really wouldn't have wanted to be there. And that's the gents' toilet. We were told in no uncertain terms, gentlemen, you have 20 seconds to relieve yourself, after which we cannot promise that you will be able to relieve yourself again. You'll have your back to the wind, because if you face the wind, it won't be 20 seconds. So we all listened to this rather carefully. That's the village, if you can call it that. These tents are put up there for 3 weeks of the year, and depending how many people go, depending how many tents they put up. As we were leaving, they were bringing more tents in for more research people. That's just another picture of the plane. That's the food tent. I put it in there more of a reason to talk about the food, or the distinct lack of it. When you've got marathon runners who are trying to have their last calories before the race, they need an awful lot of food. I was eating somewhere in the region of 7,000 calories a day prior to going here. The food that we were given was not good. The porridge in the morning was a grey mush because it was porridge oats mixed with slightly salty water because all they did was melt the ice. So it didn't taste great, and as a consequence you didn't really want to eat too much of it, but you knew you had to. In fact, everything tasted of salt because everything was mixed with water, and it was just the melted seawater. That's just to prove we were really quite close. You can see it's 89 degrees, 34 minutes and 23 seconds. So it's about as close as you can get and still run. That's the start line. Now, can you see the person that's on the right in a greenish coat, goggles, and a white thing hanging down from his neck? That's me. Now, the white thing is a polar bear that my daughter bought me for Christmas as a mascot to help me get round.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs.
We had 3 snipers in order to make sure that we stayed alive. The risk of polar bears isn't great, but it's still a risk.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience for most people. They do other races, maybe in deserts and in jungles, And, you know, the North Pole and running on the Arctic Ocean is one of those things that's a must on the running calendar.
If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today?
We're here challenging ourselves in an environment which is so alien. And I just can't help feeling that at the end of it, we're going to feel so very proud of ourselves and what we've achieved when we do it.
The menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up.
It's all a bit extreme, that bit, isn't it? The bit that I actually wanted to show you is
the sort of person we really are.
I've wanted to do this for 3 years, and now I'm finally here. And I'm doing it because it's the ultimate marathon, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, it's just awe-inspiring. I can't believe we're here. We were so lucky to get this chance.
It'll be fine. It's a beautiful day, sunny.
As hell.
I did have this loaded.
Shivering. I've never seen snow. Just making people proud of me.
Well, you got to start to finish, so let's get started.
So we had one guy cheating with 2 dogs. So there's only 44 people running. That is the maximum capacity for the race, which is 2 aircraft full. But as you can see, we're running out into kind of the unknown. There is, apart from these black markers out there, you really feel as though you are in the middle of nowhere. That's all you can hear, that crunch, crunch, crunch. That's all I wanted to show you from that. But out of 45 people that started enter, one person couldn't make it because he got flu the previous day, which must have been absolutely galling. I was fortunate enough to finish 24th. There were 5 people who were granted half marathon status because they just didn't make the full marathon, and 1 person that didn't finish at all. When you're out there, particularly towards the end of the race, when there's fewer and fewer people out there, then you really do feel alone. It is the most amazing sensation, but also the most terrifying sensation. There's enough people out there that if a problem went on, then we should be okay, but it was still a bit of a worry. There's one of our snipers. That's me! That was quite early on in the race, because I was still looking happy. That's a little bit later in the race when I'm not looking so happy. And that's me finished. That's the race organiser I'm standing with there. That, hopefully you can see all the way to the back. You can see the snow horizontally going across me. About halfway through, for my race at least, the weather changed. It went from being minus 28 to minus 41 with a very, very strong wind. It was the most incredible experience. I changed my top half of clothing at the end of lap 7, and the thing that I still don't understand, maybe one of you can tell me, my outer green coat was absolutely sodden with sweat, but it was still loose and working well. The mid layer, the fleece layer, was sodden, but it was frozen solid. When I took it off to replace it, I took it off like cardboard. And it stayed like cardboard because I put it underneath the mattress where it's sub-freezing temperatures. The base layer was sodden, but it was still warm and doing its job. It wasn't frozen. So I put a fresh layer on. But I still don't understand why that mid layer was frozen solid. But as you can see, we got lots of clothing there, and I did stay warm enough, and I sweated, which I was told off for. Now you can see this freeze marks in front of my mouth. Every lap, bar the first to the second lap, I went into the food tent in order to have a warm-up, get some more calories, some water, and that sort of thing, but also because I needed to defrost my balaclava and face mask. It was freezing to my neck, which was a little bit uncomfortable, and I didn't want to get frostbite. Bearing in mind that 14 people did get frostbite, 12 of whom got stage 2 frostbite. Stage 3, you get it cut off. You can see that it really was quite extreme. This is fascinating, for me anyway. This is a GPS recording of the route. Now we're doing laps. Normally when you do laps, the red line just gets thicker and thicker and thicker because you're doing the same lap. That shows how much the ice sheet was moving during the course of the race. So it took me 8 hours 25 minutes to do this race. So during that time, the ice sheet moved 6.5 kilometres. That's quite a bit. And if you look down the left-hand side of that, you'll see there's what looks like vertical lines, little sort of ticks. That's me resting. I'm actually sat still. But it's the ice sheet keeps moving. So I thought that was fascinating. And that's frozen toe. When I took my trainers off, there was an inch of ice packed into the toe. Thankfully, I didn't get frostbite. And that's me wearing the good old blazer of hoodie, shall I say, of running on empty for the charity, and looking a little chilly. And obviously, you've got a UK Union Jack for that. So that's my story. I've raised just shy of £9,000. The Just Giving site is still open, still operating. I'm hoping to continue. I'm not closing the Just Giving site down because I've got some plans. £9,000 is not going to be enough to make a difference. I have a target in my head of raising £50,000 for Invest in ME. So I need to carry on. In October, I'm hoping to get on to a team of people who are all kept alive by various electronic devices, typically pacemakers, to run a normal marathon in Minneapolis. And in 2 years' time, if I can get the sponsorship, the corporate sponsorship, I'm looking to do another stupid event. 7 marathons on 7 different continents, but in 7 consecutive days. The only time you get to eat and sleep is on the plane going from one race to the next. So hopefully I can use all the contacts that I've made to do it this time round in order to make it easier for next time round. So watch this space. You haven't got rid of me yet, and I will be back. Thank you.